Now, inshallah, I'd like to delve a little bit more into both of these, these aspects of jihad, both the outward and the inward, the lesser and the greater. So, I mean, in terms of the lesser struggle, this is as we know that Islam is a religion that requires submission towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. There's no God but God. And so, that means, in a sense, a freedom from anything but God. And so when you find that, human beings are enchained, are enslaved, whether it's political or economic or social, whether it's ideological, that is a state of disequilibrium. And that requires a certain exertion. And this is taking place on the social plane, on the physical plane. And that exertion is, to abolish these systems of basically oppression and slavery. It's okay.
Sure.
Allahumma salli. Now, at the same time, Islam is not just a religion of theory. It's, a religion of practice. It's one that is not just mere exposition to say something, but it's to do something. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لِمَا تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبْرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. And why do you say that which you do not do? The greatest almost offense is to say that which you do not do. So it's always that constant exertion, not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. And this is where, the important concept of amr bil ma'ruf, enjoining that which is good, joining. It's something that requires activity. وَالنَّهْيَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, to forbid the evil, to dispel evil, to support the haqq, the truth, to reject and to oppose the batil. So, this is the jihad al-asghar, which is the lesser jihad. Now, just quickly, because there's a lot of misconceptions and misperceptions and misunderstanding, especially as perpetuated by the media, as to what jihad consists of, and often is being mistranslated as holy war, and there's no such thing. There are in Islam conditions for that lesser struggle, for that, for any act that requires the dispelling of injustice. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that here are the conditions where, let's say, jihad in the normal sense of the word, in the sense that's mostly widely understood, is kind of acceptable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fight in the way of God against those who fight against you, but begin not hostilities. So here, the condition that's been presented for this jihad is self-defense. That you don't begin hostilities. That hostilities are inflicted upon you. And Allah does not love the aggressors, as the verse says. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ. How is it with you that you do not fight in the way of God and for men, women, and children that are oppressed? So another condition is that there's oppression that takes place. And then in another condition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونُ فِتْنَةٌ. And fight them until there is no more sedition, no more chaos, no more disorder. And there's this oft repeated saying of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which says that any of you who sees an indecency or evil, let him change it with his hand. If he's unable to do so, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he's unable to do so, then let him at least, kind of feel against it through his heart. But that's the weakest of faith. So, this jihad against oppression, in self-defense, against chaos, is legitimate and requires exertion. If not by hand, then by word, speaking truth to power. If not by word, then at least you feel it in your heart. And we find that this great personality, Sayyidah Zaynab alayhi salam, we unfortunately sometimes have confined her in the prism of tragedy only. That sometimes she's been misportrayed as someone who is impatient with grief. Not at all. Here's a great woman who spoke truth to power, which is a great example. And this is obviously something that she had acquired and learned from her own mother, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, who again was someone who campaigned for the truth, went door to door for the truth. These are aspects that we don't normally hear about. That Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam had that social struggle. It's not just this great exemplar in the homes, for the mother, for the daughter, but here's someone who was in society, campaigning for the truth. Now, again, because there's a lot of misunderstanding with regards to this concept of jihad, it's important to state that Islam rejects completely extremism. And I guess in the interest of time, I'll just read the English here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "O you who believe, be upright for Allah, bearers of witness with justice, and let not hatred of a people incite you not to act equitably." Don't let hate be the motivator. Don't act inequitably. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to say, act equitably, that is nearer to piety, and be careful of your duty to Allah, surely Allah is aware of what you do. And in another verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, repel the evil deed with one that is better. Verily, he between whom you and thee there's enmity will become as though there's a bosom friend. So if you're always going to be responding like with like, evil with evil, hate with hate, violence with violence, you don't create that opportunity of being the better person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always wants you to strive to repel the evil with what is better. So, this is something that, again, is not quite widely disseminated. That, as opposed to Islam being that religion of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Rather, it's one that encourages forgiveness. It's one that encourages, giving goodwill. And we see in the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam how they had repelled evil with good. Inshallah, tomorrow I'll be elaborating on that a little bit further by focusing on the life of Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam as Sajjad, and how he treated his own oppressors. And examples are replete in history. Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself, how he treated those who barred him from access to water. He was, when he had access to water, he was the one who quenched the thirsts of the enemy soldier. He went to the extent of quenching the thirst of their horses. So, this is what the path of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is. So, more on Jihad al-Asghar and Karbala. Again, we are fairly familiar with, that struggle that took place in the deserts of Ashura. But just to kind of encapsulate Imam Hussein alayhi salam's motive for that struggle, let's refer to his own words. He alayhi salam had said, "I'm not rising against Yazid as an insolent or an arrogant person or a mischief monger or tyrant." What's his purpose for struggle? "I have risen against Yazid as I seek to reform the ummah of my grandfather. I wish to bid good and forbid the evil." And he says, "O people, verily the Messenger of Allah has said, if anyone witnesses an oppressive ruler, yet does not oppose him through his action and words, it is just for Allah to place him with that oppressive ruler." So this is, the motive of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If we look at the history and how it kind of led to this point, there was a degeneration of the of Islam in society, where after the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the rulers started to use Islam just as a badge of identity, but didn't quite implement it, nor were they committed to it on the social level. So what we saw afterwards is concern for power, concern for riches, people chasing after booty, people waging wars to have people who pay taxes. This was a degeneration of the spirit of Islam. We found, for instance, creating a privileged class. It began with creating the privileged class ethnic-based, Arabs over non-Arabs, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his last pilgrimage, he says, an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, nor is a non-Arab more superior than an Arab. A white person is no more superior than a black person. A black person is no more superior than a white person. So all were equal before Islam. But what we found after Rasulullah was that there became an elite, Arabs over the Ajam. And then further down, we found that elitism became on a base of nepotism, on a familiar tribal basis, where one's family became an aristocracy, the elite of a family. And this is where Islam has degenerated, and people were becoming silent to this. And it was Imam Hussein alayhi salam who wanted to re-establish, as he himself says, that that reform of the community of his grandfather. Exposition, to say something, but it's to do something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لِمَا تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبْرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. And why do you say that which you do not do? The greatest almost offense is to say that which you do not do. So it's always that constant exertion, not just to talk the talk, but to walk the walk. And this is where the important concept of Amr bil Ma'ruf, enjoining that which is good, joining. It's something that requires activity. When nahy anil munkar, to forbid the evil, to dispel evil, to support the haqq, the truth, to reject and to oppose the batil. So this is now, inshallah, I'd like to delve a little bit more into both of these these aspects of jihad, both the outward and the inward, the lesser and the greater. So, in terms of the lesser struggle, this is as we know that Islam is a religion that requires submission towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. There's no God but God. And so, that means, and that exertion is, to abolish these systems of basically oppression and slavery. It's okay.
Sure.
Allahumma salli. Now, at the same time, Islam is not just a religion of theory. It's a religion of practice. It's one that is not just mere essence, a freedom from anything but God. And so when you find that human beings are enchained, are enslaved, whether it's political or economic or social, whether it's ideological, that is a state of disequilibrium. And that requires a certain exertion. And this is taking place on the social plane, on the physical plane.